why is it that the dedication of the Tokyo Temple is so important in the first place? And the questioner asked, it seems like the leaders are almost just excited among themselves. And I thought it was just a great question about why are we excited about the rededication and the open house. And I think it's because the rededication or the open house is something that's a symbol of the things to come and a symbol of the things in the temple. It is not that the rededication and open house is itself the most important thing, because what's important is that our hearts are on the temple. Our hearts are on the covenants that we make in the temple. And the event is not the thing. And in fact, in a meeting we had with Elder Garrett W. Gong a few months ago, that's what he emphasized to us. He said, it's not the event. It's about hearts. And so when we're excited, I suppose it's sort of like, I think when I went to college, my parents were really excited. And they said, oh, orientation is going to be great. You're going to love that first week. And they were excited about that, but what they were really excited about was about the opportunity I had to go to college. And so sometimes we talk about that first event as though it's really important, but the truly important thing is the opportunity to go and make eternal covenants and to progress along the covenant path. And the rededication is just the sort of the door opening. It is not the most important thing itself. So it's a great question. Thank you. Also about, well, what's the most beautiful temple? And that's a really interesting question. And I almost feel like, well, should I answer this one? Because is it fair to judge which temple is prettier? Because it's really not about whether they are beautiful. But I will tell you that I love the San Diego temple because it is filled with light, and the light streams in through the stained glass. I think the Sapporo temple is spectacular. The woodwork and the light, and it's just really just beautiful to me. But other temples, the Salt Lake City temple for its history, or the Manti temple for the beautiful old murals. And very frankly, when I think about a beautiful temple, to me it's partly the temple where I went for most of my life, which is the Provo temple. Now, I do not think the Provo temple is the most beautiful temple in the church. But to me, it's beautiful because that's where I went with my family. It's where my ward members went. It's where I would see friends when I was at the temple. And so the inside of the Provo temple is beautiful to me, even though from an architectural perspective, I like some of the other ones better. Another question that I had was, how often should we go to the temple? That the short answer is that there is no specific answer for how often you ought to go to the temple. And it's a matter of your own individual judgment. President Nelson has said that where a temple is reasonably available, he'd encourage us to make a regular appointment with the Lord. And if we keep that regular appointment, he's promised that the Lord will bring in our lives the miracles he knows that we need. And so that's something of a standard, a regular appointment, but it will depend on your circumstances, your family, your job, how far you are from the temple. As I think about this question, a part of it may be that we shouldn't necessarily ask, how often do I have to go to the temple? Instead, the question is, how often may I go to the temple? And boy, I understand this question because sometimes we can think about it like a checklist. Tell me how many times I need to go so that I can make that big check and say, I did it, I did it. But the Lord isn't keeping a checklist. The Lord just wants our hearts. And so the question is really, how often can I go to the temple and yet still fulfill my other responsibilities professionally, to my family, to my spouse? and then make our own judgments. So I hope that's helpful on that question. What's my favorite ordinance in the temple? I'm not sure you're allowed to have a favorite ordinance because they all work together to get you further along the covenant path and back with Heavenly Father. But if I have to identify one, it's sealing. Because when I think about the promises of sealing with my wife, they're absolutely glorious. And so if I think about that one, maybe that's my favorite. But frankly, you can't get one without the other, and so they all probably lump into that category for me. So why is it recommended that we go to the temple regularly? Why does President Nelson say make a regular appointment? Just a couple of thoughts. One might be that those for whom we're doing temple work, those who are deceased, need us to go to the temple. And we bring blessings in their eternal lives when we do. Another is that we need the peace and the perspective of the temple. Sometimes life can feel burdensome or pressured, and we're in the temple, and for a moment we hit pause and we see the eternities, and we see that there's a lot more than just the few small hard things that might happen in our life. And so we need the temple for that. And then I think about President Nelson's promise that if we'll make a regular appointment, that the Lord will bring the miracles He knows we need into our lives and the lives of our families. And boy, I felt like I need miracles. And so that to me is a good reason to be in the temple. So I had a wonderful question, and it was really about those who are struggling to overcome a habit that may make it difficult for them to enter the temple right now. Maybe it's something that's impacting their worthiness to enter the temple. What can they do? How do they feel worthy to enter the temple? And I am not in the position to judge worthiness. I mean, that is for a judge in Israel and for your bishop to make that judgment. But what I know is that the Lord loves you, and the Lord wants you to be in His house. And Elder Uchtdorf has taught this in General Conference a couple of times, just so powerfully. But the Lord understands when we fall down, and all of us fall down, and we keep falling down. But the real test is whether we'll get back up and keep trying. And I mentioned before that the temple is not about an event, it's about our hearts. And that's the same thing. When we give Him our hearts and we're humbly trying to do our best, He'll help us. And so, we don't want to make excuses, but at the same time it's to say, Heavenly Father, I'm going to keep trying. And then just work with your bishop and have faith that this door can open, just like President Nelson talked about at this last conference, that faith can be really powerful, and faith in Jesus Christ and His ability to heal can really heal and open the doors to the temple. Is there going to be any difference in the way we use temples in the millennium? Well, it's interesting because the two great works that will continue in the millennium are really the sharing of the gospel, missionary work, and uniting families for eternity or temple work. And so I expect the temples will be really busy during the millennium. And there have been a number of prophets who've commented on the fact that we'll continue to do temple work into the millennium.